In the shadow of the great northern peaks, where the air is thin and snow blankets the ground most of the year, lived a stray dog the locals called Koda. No one knew where he came from. Some said he had been born to a sled team and left behind. Others said he'd wandered from a distant village, lost and forgotten. But everyone agreed on one thing: Koda wasn't just a dog. He was a survivor. Years had passed since the dog had roamed the streets or seen human faces. Most nights he slept alone in the abandoned wooden cabin on the edge of the forest. When the wind rattled the window panes like bones in a marrow, he would curl up on the floor with his head between his paws. The sun rarely penetrated the gloom of winter, so he spent his days dozing near the window, listening to the wind, watching the swirling snow. The mountains were stark and unforgiving, yet somehow Koda seemed to thrive here. His thick fur kept him warm, and his instincts were as sharp as any wild wolf. Whenever hunger gnawed at his belly, he tracked down small prey: rabbits, squirrels, marmots, or scavenged scraps left by passing travelers. He mostly avoided people, remembering the sting of their indifference and the ache of loneliness. But sometimes, if they approached cautiously enough, he would let them stroke his fur and scratch behind his ears. They couldn't keep him though, not with their busy lives and busy families. Most nights, when the moon hung like a silver coin in the dark sky, Koda went hunting. Small game was nimble and quick, so it took patience and skill to catch them. Sometimes he would wait for hours, perfectly still, before pouncing. Other times, he followed tracks in the snow, weaving through the silent trees. In the stillness of the mountain night, only the crunch of snow under his paws broke the quiet. Even the wind held its breath as if afraid to disturb the peace. As the seasons turned, the landscape shifted. Winter's icy grip loosened, giving way to the tentative warmth of spring. The forest woke up from its slumber, stretching and yawning, shaking off the last of the snow. Buds swelled on the branches, painting the trees in shades of green and gold. The air buzzed with the drone of insects, the distant calls of birds, and the murmur of a nearby stream. One evening, after a day of chasing butterflies and rolling in patches of warm sunlight, Cody lay panting on the forest floor. A fat bumblebee had stung him on the nose. It throbbed and pulsed, sending hot hair streaming down his face. Suddenly, he heard a sharp crack, like a twig snapping under a heavy foot. He lifted his head, ears pricked, and sniffed the air. Human! Cautiously, he rose and melted into the trees. That night, the forest echoed with the sound of rushing water. Heavy rains had swollen the stream, turning it into a raging torrent. Cody huddled under a bush, shivering not just from the cold, but from fear. Thunder rumbled overhead, and flashes of lightning illuminated the churning water, the swaying trees, and the worried look on his face. In his 8 years, he'd never seen a storm like this one. Then, as the sky cracked open and the rain poured down in sheets, he heard it again, a cry, faint, sharp, weak. He looked up, ears perked, trying to locate the sound. It came from above, from beyond the raging torrent. Lightning flashed, revealing a narrow ledge on the far bank. A tiny fox cub, soaked and scared, huddled there. Its leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, its body shaking with cold and fear. Cody hesitated. Normally, he avoided people and other animals, remembering the sting of betrayal and the ache of abandonment. But something in the cub's eyes, a spark of fear, a glimmer of hope, touched him, reminded him of himself. Slowly, carefully, he moved forward. The cub flinched, but Cody held his ground, letting out a soft whine, a sound of comfort, a sound of reassurance. He wanted the cub to know he meant no harm. After a moment, the cub relaxed slightly, its breathing slowing, its eyes losing some of their frantic gleam. Cody waited, knowing that trust wouldn't come easily, but that it was worth the effort. Finally, when the storm had passed and the sun peeked through the clouds, he nudged the cub gently, encouraging it to move. The cub tried to rise, but collapsed again, whimpering in pain. Cody licked its head, a gesture of comfort, and carefully pulled it free of the mud and debris. Then, with the cub in his mouth, he started to cross the raging torrent. He made it to the other side, shook himself free of the water, and collapsed beside the cub, licking its head again, keeping it warm. With his own body, he stayed with the cub until it regained its strength, sharing his food, his water, his warmth, and slowly, his hope. Day by day, the cub grew stronger. It limped at first, but soon learned to run, play, and explore the forest beside him. She was a vixen, he decided, even if she didn't know it yet. She chased butterflies in the meadow, climbed trees with practiced ease, and swam in the stream with joyful abandon. She was fierce too, defending her den from imaginary foes and pouncing on errant leaves with mock ferocity. One evening, as the sun dipped below the peaks, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Koda lay beside the vixen, watching the fireflies wink on in the gathering gloom. For the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of contentment settle over him. He didn't remember the last time he'd shared anything with another living being, much less welcomed another into his life. And yet here he was, sharing his food, his shelter, his very existence with this tiny creature who was as wild and free as the wind. They slept together in the den, curled up in a tangle of fur and affection. As the weeks passed, Koda watched the vixen grow, change, explore, hunt, fight, and flirt. Her spirit was as bright and untamed as the mountain sky, and he knew she would never be content to live a tame life. Still, a part of him hoped she would stay with him, even if it was just for a while longer. But the day came when the vixen disappeared. Koda waited patiently by the den, but she didn't return. Panic started to rise within him, sharp and cold. Had she met with an accident? Was she lost or in danger? He couldn't bear the thought of losing her, not after all they had been through together. He started to search for her, sniffing at the ground, following her tracks, calling her name until his voice was hoarse. Days turned into weeks, and Koda's hope began to fade. He returned to the den, defeated and heartbroken. It was empty, silent, and suddenly very cold. As he curled up on the floor, he noticed a small object under the bush outside the den. He went to investigate and found a leather pouch tied with a red ribbon. Curiosity flickered within him, and he nudged the pouch with his nose. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, he ripped it open. Inside, nestled in a bed of moss, was a small, intricately carved wooden flute. He sniffed it cautiously, then nudged it out with his nose. Suddenly, the forest around him seemed to come alive with music. Birds sang, the wind hummed, the leaves rustled, and the stream gurgled in time with an unseen melody. Koda felt a surge of emotion, a mix of joy, sadness, and longing, wash over him. He didn't understand the music, but he knew it spoke of the vixen, of her journey, of her destiny. He understood, too, now why she had left, why she couldn't stay. She was meant to roam free, to follow the whispers of the wind, to dance with the fireflies, to sing with the stars. And as he stood there, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, he heard her voice, faint, clear, and sweet, echoing through the trees. He closed his eyes, tail wagging, and listened to the music of the mountains, the music of the wild, the music of his heart.